December 14th, 2016 meeting of the Portland Development Commission. Call the roll.
Chair Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Myers,
Here.
Commissioner Northern Capua, here. Commissioner Uden,
Here.
Commissioner Cruz.
Here. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Cruz.
All right, few items. On the 31st, I went, or excuse me, I guess it was the 30th. No, it was the 31st. I went to the Elevate Capital event showcasing the portfolio companies that Elevate is now funding. And of course, this arose through the Inclusive Startup Fund effort. And that was a great event, really impressive companies, and I think they're off to a really good start. On the 8th, I went to the Greater Portland, Inc. Annual Economic Summit event at the Art Museum. Also on the 8th, I went to the Hispanic Heritage Dinner put on by the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, of which I happen to be board chair. And then today, along with Chair Kelly, I attended the Audit Committee meeting with Moss Adams and Executive Director Branham and Faye Brown and several others. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Edlin.
I attended the Bullitt Foundation Educational Grant Ceremony, attended the Wheeler Economic Development Group meeting that he pulled together, had a meeting with Portland Center Stage, toured a China delegation through town, and attended the Clean Tech event, which had portfolio companies also, and it was very exciting, I thought. Yeah, very promising.
Commissioner Myers.
Attended the Elevate Capital event with Commissioner Cruz as well, and also attended the retirement party for John Mullis. And I did attend the Thorns trouncing of Houston and securing their playoff spot. Attended the 2016 Bull Session charity events and fundraiser this year, raising, I'm not sure what they raised this year so far, but they've raised quite a bit of money for Dornbeckers. And also the Labor Day event at Oaks Park.
Yeah, Marlon.
So I had the great privilege of addressing and being able to participate in an event called Pitch Black that was actually put on by Stephen Green, or that was his brainchild, and it was an opportunity to have 10 young African Americans pitch their ideas and to have folks who are potential investors play the shark. So it was actually really nice. And then there was an event, and that was held on the August 25th at Instrument HQ off of North Williams, which was nice. And the day prior to that, on the 24th, they had sort of a VIP session to meet with all of the young entrepreneurs, and it was quite nice.
Thank you. I'm going to say that I was at the audit committee this morning, and other than that, I didn't make a list of things that I've done, but been check-ins and so on. Commissioner Branham, is this your first?
It is my first
I'm sorry,
official.
Commissioner Executive Director Branham. I didn't want to elevate you that quick.
Yeah, quick promotion. Yes, this is my first official commission meeting as executive director. So would you like me to, I can give my report?
Yes.
So I want to start by thanking the commission for the opportunity to serve in this role. I'm really honored to do the work and to deliver on our objective of creating widely shared prosperity across Portland. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone. And as I promised, I would hit the ground running. So last week I was pleased to announce some staffing changes within PDC and am delighted that Cyrilda Summers McGee will be joining us as HR and Workforce Development Director on October 3rd. I've created 3 new positions to lead PDC's economic development, real estate, and social equity policy and communications work. So Lisa Abwaf and Tori Campbell will be stepping in interim roles, and we are planning to hire a director of social equity, communications, and policy this fall. And finally, I was very pleased to announce that Jillian Detweiler has agreed to come join PDC as interim development manager, leaving Mayor Charlie Hale's office. So we're pleased to have her. So in addition to these internal changes, we've had a busy schedule in these final summer days of summer. So joined Commissioner Capuya, Moreland Capuya at the Pitch Black event. And we wanted to congratulate all of the winners and also Stephen Green, fantastic event. Was also at the Elevate Capital event and joined Loretta Smith to introduce the 6 winners. There are still opportunities to invest in the fund, and so would encourage people who are interested in investing in these fabulous companies to go online or to contact us and learn more. You can learn more at elevate.vc. PDC is now the proud owner of the U.S. Post Office, the downtown post office site, which is about 20 years in coming and represents an enormous contribution by a number of staff and visionary leaders within the city. So it's really historic occasion. The post office will continue operating for a year and a half to 2 years while the post office builds their new facility in Colwood. But we have great plans for really inclusive economic and real estate development there. And so we will be working with the community in the beginning of next year to begin thinking about what might go there. So really exciting moment for the city. I also attended the GPI annual event and heard about how our lives will all be dramatically changed by artificial intelligence, and thinking about the new economy and how that will change our world. Was also at the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. John Jackley there received the Bravo Award for his community service, and was pleased to see that. We have some events that are forthcoming. So the Innovative Housing and Oregon Cultural Trust is presenting the opening of a sound art installation here in Old Town Chinatown at the Erickson Fritz Apartments. The event runs from 5 to 7 and is designed to envelop the visitor in the sound and story fragments of daily life around town. So people should come and check it out. It will apparently be a sound experience in Old Town Chinatown. So it's really an interesting community-driven approach here in Old Town. I'll be representing PDC on the panel for NAIOP, which is the Commercial Real Estate Development Association workshop on the post office. Some great PSU students put together a vision for the post office, and I know there will be people on the board and other staff there to hear what the students have proposed. The Latino Networks Noche Bella event is happening on the 23rd of this month, so lots of good events coming up. But finally, and perhaps most importantly, I do want to recognize that this is the last board meeting for John Jackley and Gina Bieland and Bruce Wood and Patricia Weekly. So it's hard to really encapsulate the full body of work that the 3 people here, John and Gina and Bruce, have collectively accomplished, and Patricia as well. But Bruce and Gina, have collectively moved forward the Lentz projects, right? There was very little development happening. We're on the precipice of 4 major developments in Lentz Town Center. They spearheaded the acquisition of the post office, moved forward the Centennial Mills, worked to make PNCA a reality, and have had countless contributions on a number of projects across the city using their real estate and development expertise, as well as being just really kind, energetic people. So we will miss them. Patricia Weekly has served as the Business and Social Equity Program Coordinator in her time here, and has also contributed enormously to all of the projects and ensuring that we meet our equity objectives. She's also been a strong leader on the Equity Council, developed our relationship with Crossroads, and has really been formative in terms of our considerations of thinking about how to become an anti-racist, multicultural institution. And so we really appreciate all that she's done. And John Jackley has been with PDC for 10 years, and he has held a number of positions here, consistently leading communications and social equity, but he also pitch hit and stood up the neighborhood division when we created the neighborhood economic development strategy. At one point, he was the interim HR director. John is the go-to person for almost everything, and so we're really sad to see him go, but he is on to a completely new and interesting adventure. And so we wish him well on that. But he has really spent his time here building trust with Portland's diverse communities. He's beloved in these communities, and he's supported really important projects from the June Key Delta Center to the Mercado. So we are committed to keeping his legacy and to continuing his work. So I think John wanted to come up and say a few words. If that's okay with you, Chair?
Well, good afternoon and thanks. I'll be extremely short, but I did want to take, a few seconds just to say thank you. I have a good friend who tells me that every organization and people have their seasons, and PDC has been really lucky. After the chaos of the early 2000s, Bruce Warner and Mark Rosenbaum were the perfect fit for Mayor Tom Potter and that council and that board. They dramatically increased resources in Lentz. River District, Interstate, and other places. Then under Mayor Adams, Patrick Quinton and Scott Andrews, and now Tom Kelly were the perfect fit for that time and for that season. PDC had to grapple with the recession, with downsizing, and still deliver game-changing projects and strategies like the economic development strategy and the neighborhood strategy. And now PDC is poised for a third winning season with Kimberly Branham and her new team at the helm. Some new faces on the board. You've got the strategic plan and the sustainable business effort forming the guiding core of the work. And I know Kimberly's already started to double down on equity and inclusion in everything we do. So in sum, PDC is off to a terrific start. And seasons apply to people too. And so after 10 years here, it was time for me to go on to a new adventure in the private sector. And I just wanted to thank you all and everyone else at PDC for a terrific ride, tons of good work. The opportunity to be part of a team that's made a real difference. And truly, I've been a resident of Portland for a long time now in the city after I moved from West Lynn. And PDC really is a better place every day for all that you and everybody here do. And I just wanted to say thanks. And our paths will probably cross on occasion. I'm vice chair of MCIP and some other local community boards, so I won't be a stranger. But thank you very much. It's been great.
John, thank you. And Gina and Bruce, thank you. Your services to this agency have been really important. Thank you all. There always needs to be somebody to start the applause. Thank you.
It's worthy of an applause.
If it's worthy of an applause, and that was definitely worthy. Thank you again. So we move on to the public comment, and we have today from Peterson's Convenience Store, Douglas Peterson and David Gweither. Would you come forward, please, gentlemen? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Doug Peterson. I own Peterson's on Morrison, the convenience store and the parking structure, 10th and Yamhill Parking Garage, which is scheduled for remodel next year. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about us. We have 3 stores in downtown Portland. I have 25 employees, including some very well-paid managers and a very well-paid tech guy. And my Morrison store that's in the parking structure is my highest volume store. And without that type of volume, I'd have to really cut back on my help a lot. At any rate, the store is focused on the traffic patterns of the MAX line. We were there before the MAX line started and developed the business there. We have 700 customers per day, over 700 customers a day, and our average daily sales are $3,400. And we do $13,000 a month in lottery sales for the state. That a good portion of the lottery goes to various public activities, so it's a valuable thing. Anyway, we were told that when the remodel starts, we'll have to vacate the space, be gone for well over a year, and that there's no guarantees we'd be able to come back. Well, that might For most of the other tenants, it'd probably be if you're going to be gone a year, well, you just find a new location, start over. But it's hard to start over when your business is focused on the light rail line. So we really want to be able to stay there. We're thinking that our location in the center of the block where there's not as much construction, the elevators, stairwells, that type of thing are not there where we're at, that we wouldn't have to be as closed as long or at all. And that we're the belief Max Line will continue operating this transit stop there because it's also a transfer station for the streetcar and also the library stop. Next year, we have signed up and we will be selling the IHOP pass. They will no longer sell tickets out of vending machines at the Max stops. People will have to buy the cards and load the cards, and we will be able to load the cards for the customers in our store, buy the cards in our store. And that's kind of a convenience. We're the only ones that, in the area that are going to be selling them that we know of right now. And anyway, we just want to stay. And the Portland building is going through a remodel, and the city of Portland has promised the tenants in that building that they have first right of refusal on new space when the building is remodeled at market rates. And that's all I'm asking for is market rates and be able to be there. We've been there for over 32 years. We've been highly successful. And thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Wyther. I'm a lobbyist for Peterson's Convenience Store. And as you see, there's a couple of handouts. The one in the newspaper article about the Portland building, Mr. Peterson just alluded to. The second one comes from the architecture firm that ended up with a bid for the project. And in their suggestions and design criteria, one of the assumptions that they make is that if they upgrade the retail space, they can charge, the PDC, I guess, will be taking over and they can charge higher rents than they are now. Now, if you look through the list of consultants, what's missing? No, there's been no input from commercial real estate. The architects are making some assumptions. First of all, they didn't poll the tenants. They didn't ask the tenants if they'd be willing to pay market rates in the future, which Peterson's Convenience Stores are. In terms of upgrading in the design and the floor plan that the architecture firm has proposed, the space that Peterson's is in currently is still intact. They only need 2,700 square feet, or 2,500 out of 27,000 square feet. In terms of staying open during construction, one of the problems, of course, in any construction projects is things falling off the top of the building or whatever. Well, there's some significant overhangs that protect the pedestrian walkways that with the right sort of design of construction can mitigate any of those problems. Secondly, there's 7 stories, 27,000 square feet per story, of which in the bottom one, Peterson's takes up less than 9% of the area, and then if you add the other 7, it's like less than 2% of the total project would be Peterson's. So it can be, all those problems can be mitigated, and then the extra rent that you would collect during this process, which is going to be 12 to 18 months, could also pay for any extra costs that might be incurred in putting a fence or something. Who knows what'll be done. But one of the things that I'm looking at as sort of an outsider is the fairness issue. Obviously, the Portlandia Cafe that is mentioned in that newspaper article has a very strong relationship with the city employees. They've been feeding them for 20 years. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of a relationship. They get consideration. We're in an equal footing with them in terms of we've been a tenant of the city, a good tenant of the city for over 30 years. The last 8 years, we have not been able to get a lease, and we haven't been able to get air conditioning into place. So we're looking forward to working with you, and hopefully you can be of help to us in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pardon me.
So Our next agenda issue is consent agenda, Resolution 1647, or I'm sorry, Resolution 7206, Report 1647. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion, have a second? Second. Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, motion carries. Next one is Resolution 7207, authorizing an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. Procurement services in an amount of not to exceed $565,700. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. So our next item is Report 1649, Resolution 7208. This is authorizing the Executive Director to execute a change order to the Construction Management General Contractor contract in the amount not to exceed $1,043,750 for the selective demolition of Centennial Mills. Will Tier. Welcome, Will.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Will Thier, Real Estate Project Manager here at PDC. So today I'll be presenting an action item to the board regarding Centennial Mills. Staff is requesting that the board approve Resolution 7208, authorizing an amendment to the existing demolition contract in an amount not to exceed $1,043,750. The amendment will authorize demolition of the feed mill building. I'll be providing the board with a report on our marketing efforts over the summer, review with the board the feed mill's current conditions, speak to the budget impact of this proposed action, and finish with our next steps regarding the redevelopment efforts going forward. In response to feedback received from a Citizens Advisory Committee last year, PDC staff took the northern half of the property out for sale earlier this summer. PDC hired CBRE through a competitive RFP process. CBRE is a national brokerage firm. They marketed the property for a period of 60 days. CBRE leveraged their national network, contacting hundreds of potential buyers. They produced print, online, and multimedia marketing material, as well as signage on the property. The offering had several requirements attached to it, and you can see those in the upper left-hand corner of the slide, in an effort to ensure that any selected buyer would adhere to the 5 principles of the 2006 Framework Plan. After an extensive effort by the brokers, only 3 buyers ultimately submitted offers on the property. The main reason given by those who declined to offer was that the site was simply too complicated. The first proposal was considered by staff to be non-responsive, as it did not include any preservation or public connectivity. The second proposal included extensive requests for further PDC investment that were not included in the offering and would result in placing a great amount of risk back on PDC's shoulders. The final offer was simply much below staff's expectation for the value of the redevelopment opportunity. For these reasons, staff has discontinued the sales efforts for the time being. Now, regarding today's request to authorize demolition of the feed mill, the next couple slides are a review of the existing conditions of the building, as well as some detailed estimates of the cost to restore it. As you can see from the pictures, the feed mill is in an advanced state of decay. The first 3 levels consist of a significant amount of terracotta brick, which is, excuse me, see if I can get this thing to work here. Maybe not. Which is the white area there on the left-hand picture is where most of the terracotta brick currently resides, and that's a material that's not known for its longevity. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. So additionally, the roof and sides of the feed mill have multiple penetration points, which have resulted in extensive internal timber rot, as well as water damage. So you can see some of that in these photos here. So here are the latest estimates for restoration of the building based on input from architects, engineers, and construction professionals. While the total cost of restoring the building could run to nearly $14 million, the final market value of the building is likely to be only maybe half that. Staff has completed development modeling that suggests that even after the inclusion of 20% tax credits, an additional $6.5 million of public subsidy would likely be required. These costs do not take into account recent potential foundation conditions that could potentially push those costs even higher. So here's a picture of the north side of the feed mill building, and what the long yellow line signifies is a demarcation from the warehouse B slab on the left, where that leftmost arrow is pointing, and its level if it were to be continued over to the right, which it was, but it's been removed. And then the dashed line represents where the current basement floor of the feed mill is currently existing. So you can see that it appears that there's been some significant settlement on this side of the building from where the adjacent foundations used to be. So as the buildings that previously wrapped the feed mill building have been removed, the demolition contractor and owner's rep have gained better access and visibility to these previously covered areas. As I mentioned, there appears to be a significant amount of settling on the north side of the building. Unlike the flour mill, which rests upon driven piling, the feed mill's foundation is a shallow stem wall and concrete footings sitting on fill material. So it's in a much less stable environment. Additionally, with removal of the wharf decking and columns, we've been able to confirm that the east wall of the feed mill sits directly on the seawall. The condition of the seawall is a bit of an unknown variable. If it were to require additional shoring and strengthening as part of restoration, the cost could be substantial when considering the regulatory challenges of working in the Willamette River. All the area there you see at the bottom of the picture is considered riverbank. The cost and scope involved in answering questions about both the settlement as well as the seawall are costs not accounted for in the previous estimate shown. I'll have our consultants from KPFF, KLK Consulting, and the project lead from Northwest Demolition come up after the presentation to answer any questions you may have about these additional issues. So here's the budget. This is the budget that's set for the entire demolition and redevelopment project at just shy of $21 million. From previous board action approvals over the past couple of years, the demolition component of this total budget is $13,712,000. Because we were able to realize nearly $2 million of savings during phase one, we will be able to accomplish the additional $1 million of work that's associated with this amendment without exceeding the board's original budget approvals. Even after the inclusion of this amendment, the demolition costs are currently projected to come in nearly $1 million less than that original $13.7 million board approval. So where do we go from here? There are still a number of challenges to overcome in order to put shovels in the ground for new construction. And the framework principle of capturing history is still a top priority for PDC staff. We believe that efforts should focus on the iconic flour mill. The flour mill has a number of advantages over the feed mill, such as its all-concrete exterior structure and more flexible programming layout. Staff has already taken several steps to prevent the further deterioration of the building, making the building watertight for this upcoming winter by fixing the roof, repairing windows, and patching holes in the exterior of the building. We've also upgraded the fire life safety systems. Throughout demolition of all the other buildings, we've also been diligent in salvaging any and all historic artifacts that we could, and we've been storing them there on the property for future inclusion in any potential redevelopment. So we've taken a number of steps here in order to tee this building up for future preservation and development. Ultimately, we'll be working closely over the next several weeks with our consultants as well as Commissioner Edlin to try and identify a development concept that can achieve the framework principles within the constraints of the remaining budget. We will also explore the availability of additional funds to augment our own. I think that that's probably going to be critical in achieving this site's fullest potential. So in summary, staff is requesting the board approve this resolution authorizing an amendment to the existing demolition contract for demolition of the feed mill building. So I'd like to now call up our consultants that are here in the audience, as well as the demolition contractor, to answer any follow-up questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Will before we have these other consultants up? So we have Jeff James from Northwest Demolition, Andy Camp from KPFF, and Dave Oburn from KLK Consulting. Good afternoon and welcome.
Go ahead and do introductions, starting with Jeff here.
I'm Jeff James. I'm the project manager for Northwest Demolition and Dismantling on the Centennial Mills project.
I'm Dave Oburn. I'm serving as owner's representative for the project here with KLK Consulting.
I'm Andy Camp. I'm with KPFF Consulting Engineers. We're the structural engineer for the demo.
Thank you. Dave, do you want to kick this off? Or?
Sure. I'll try to do my best. Will's already given you a kind of high-level summary here of specifically the feed mill. And again, team, jump in here. We, of course, both myself and Jeff are out there basically daily here. And what we've learned over time here over the past year, demolishing really about 9 to 10 other buildings, is there's a lot of surprises out there. And I think what became more and more apparent was the condition of the feed mill, specifically with respect to the structural integrity. We already mentioned the differential settlement there, northwest corner, and then looking back on the historical drawings, pretty much all the other structures were supported on driven piles, and in this case, in the feed mill, for whatever good reason, in 1928, they simply put it on a small stem wall and a spread footing on imported fill. The fill that we've dug around out there is not the best in the world, so no surprise after 90-plus years, we're getting some settlement. And then I think most disconcerting was we never really fully understood the condition of the wharf and how it interfaced with all the structures, and it appears that the wharf provided some lateral stability for the actual seawall as well as the adjacent buildings. And that, again, is a little bit disconcerting. We're watching it very carefully because obviously working around there, we don't want a catastrophic collapse of any part of the seawall. But that was, I think, another surprise that really comes into play. That, combined with the current status of the building, Will's already mentioned, it pretty much rains directly inside. We have had a couple decades of interior deterioration, and I really think the upside of trying to fix it probably just doesn't make sense. Chime in, Jeff or Andy, if I've...
No, I think you've covered it, Dave. You know, we're here just if you should make a decision to demolish the building, we're here to hopefully provide that service for you.
Andy?
KPFF hasn't, we have not personally looked at the settlement issue, but we're very familiar with the structure of the building. We've done a little bit of studying of the building and what it would take to rehabilitate it. So we can say that the floors are generally not salvageable. So rehabilitation schemes that we've looked at involve keeping the exterior walls and you know, adding lateral systems to that, but having to replace all of the interior structure. And with the, as Dave mentioned, the fact that this building is not on piles, it's likely that you would have to do significant foundation work, which, you know, would be tricky and costly to get at.
Foundation work hasn't been
As in,
included in the pricing, is that right?
I think it may have been included. I think we indicated on our sketches that it would need pile foundations as part of the frames and or shear walls that were be added.
Commissioners, questions for these three?
I have a couple questions. Can you talk about when you uncovered this settlement issue? My understanding is that wasn't apparent when we first started the demolition work, and through the demolition of other buildings, you've uncovered that?
Yeah, it became most apparent right adjacent to the feed mill on the north side is the former Warehouse B structure. When Northwest Demolition initiated really demolition, we started peeling things back. We actually not only found the slab had, meaning the slab of the feed mill had gone down from that adjacent structure, but all the main beams that went across literally were pulled up. So clearly the building, let's just call it, had settled. As you know, that was a warren, if you will, a big labyrinth of a building, and it would have been very difficult to identify that when we started. It just became real apparent when we popped the roof off, and then we literally saw beams that were 3 or 4 inches above just hanging there. Then what was most apparent was last winter when it started to rain, water had never really gotten into the bottom of the feed mill. And just simple as the age-old, I think this goes back about 5,000 years of level indicator, the water in the bottom of the feed mill was 6 inches deeper in that northwest corner and dry over on the other side. So we started to stitch all these pieces together that were just not fully realized before. That's hard to really say without really, my sense again, we've had 80 or 90 years come down 6 inches, so it's probably coming down very incremental, and without some fixed survey point, you know, over a year, it's not like we're seeing it settle an inch or something. So I think it's just one of those things that it would continue, if you will, to lean unless a structural micropile or some kind of, you know, stabilized foundation system was installed. We're concerned out there, even as we work today. I'm not going to say that it would be a catastrophic collapse, but again, safety is paramount on this project site, and we're being very ginger along that entire seawall area. There are portions of the seawall that we've excavated the slab back that literally have voids behind, and we have now finally confirmed there's no tiebacks on the seawall. So essentially, it's just a concrete wall just sitting there with, you know, 10 or 12 feet of dirt behind it. So Northwest Demo is taking a lot of precautions working around there to ensure the safety of the equipment and workers here. Yeah, I think we're feeling a little more confident about the flour mill. Flour mills, sitting on wood piles. The piles that we've removed the tops of the concrete out, and we've been able to see the tops of them, seem to have integrity. So that gives me confidence that the ones back in the flour mill are okay. And even though the east side of the flour mill is adjacent to the seawall, it's much shorter in that location. It's only about 4-foot drop versus out here at the feed mill. So I think with getting a temporary roof on it, we buttoned up a lot of the windows. I think we're in a position that we're going to at least stop the, let's call it, bleeding out there to afford somebody maybe a chance to redevelop it.
Any of your three organizations recommend additional structural investigations into the flour mill to ensure its integrity? And the reason I ask is twofold. One is safety, and two is from the public's perspective, it kind of feels like, I think, a drib and drab as we take these down piece by piece. And I think we owe the public doing what we can to save that building. And I would sure hate to sit here 2 months from now and have you come back and say,
That wouldn't go over well.
with any of us. So I'm asking the three of you, are there additional investigations that you would recommend, or do you feel like you've done sufficient investigations to sit here and tell us that it's structurally sound?
And you're talking about the flour mill now. I just want to be clear. Well, I think I'll turn to Andy.
Two aspects, one
Yeah.
saving it and two saving it.
Well, I mean, as structural engineers, we're pretty much always going to say that it's capable, that it's a possibility to save the building. It's just a question of how much time and resources you want to invest into that. Mostly due to the foundation issues, the flour mill is going to have fewer problems than the feed mill. But it's possible to save both buildings. It's just a question of how much do you want to invest in doing that?
Do you feel that we should do additional due diligence into the flour mill at this point?
Into the flour mill? I feel like we have a pretty good idea of what's going on there. I don't know that more investigation would really lead to any different results, I guess.
I just wondered, one of the comments that seems to keep coming around is, given the length of time that the city has had control of the site, that an insufficient amount of work may have been done to preserve it during this time period, and therefore now some of our decisions are based on that. Is there anything that could have been done in a cost-effective, kind of simple, relatively simple way to try to preserve this feed mill building? Or is there just nothing that could have been done to prevent this settling? From what I understand, from what you've basically just said, is that you would have had to have a new sort of foundation system installed under the building if you had been able to discover the settling in advance to begin with. Well, obviously, that wasn't known, and it doesn't sound like there was anything that necessarily could have been done on an interim basis. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that essentially the case?
Well, in addition to that, you had all those buildings we demolished that were, let's call it, in your way of not only investigating it, but then, providing any reasonable solution. I mean, I'm not saying you can't try to do micropiles inside of a building, but again, as Andy mentioned on cost, costs really just spiral up here on that. Again, I think clearly maybe there could have been some, roofing repairs and a few other things, but that isn't the only critical issue specifically on the feed mill. Even if you had a new roof on it, it wouldn't make a difference on the
Wouldn't
building
affect the settlement,
leaning.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, would have saved some of the interior structure perhaps, but remember it already had 70, 80 year, jump on deterioration. Most of the old historical buildings like this, generally a 50-year lifespan is pretty good, and here we are pushing almost, 90 years. So again, we're just getting up there.
Thank you.
So so we've talked about the cost of preserving it, and I've heard from you today that, it can be, that the feed mill could be preserved. It just depends on how much you want to spend, and what I'm hearing is that it's cost prohibitive, so the decision has been made to move towards demolition. So in that process, I'm wondering what the risks are of demolition. I've heard from folks that, that processes have been taken to mitigate those risks, but I'm still not clear on what those are. So I'm wondering if you might be able to talk to us a little bit about that today.
I think it'd be Jeff here.
I guess as far as risk of demolition, I guess I don't quite understand the question because, you know, we've taken down the buildings that are there and we've done it safely and we've, as far as I know, had minimal impact on the neighborhood. So as far as going after the feed mill, we'd use the same processes that we've used on the other buildings. It's not, you know, any taller. We took down grain elevators right next to it that are even taller than it. Probably the biggest challenge we have with the feed mill.
So it turns out you did understand my question.
What's that?
So it turns out you did understand the question.
I wasn't quite sure.
Because there's multiple impacts.
There's always, yeah. No, I was just say, there's always risk when you take down a building. The biggest risk is to our workers, and that's why we use mechanized equipment as opposed to manual labor to take down buildings in armored cabs and these things. But as far as the feed mill goes, it would come down just like the other buildings did, taking it down with a top-down demolition with a high-reach excavator that goes up to the very top and starts nibbling at the building and just chews it all the way down, as opposed to collapsing it or exploding it or those things. It's the safest way to bring down a building. The other thing, though, about the feed mill that gives us a new challenge is now that the wharf is gone, where the demolition would have just fallen onto the wharf and we'd clean it up, we now have to protect the beach. So it does add a challenge. It's not something we can't do. It's just we're going to have to put in extra features to keep the debris off the beach.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you. We have a few more people to speak to this. We have Mike Tevis from Intrinsic Art and Fusion. And we have Peggy Moretti from Restore Oregon. If you want to come up one at a time or both?
Anyways, fine.
Come on up, Peggy. But we'll take Mike first.
I'm executive director of an arts nonprofit called Art Fusion. We were one of the groups that made an offer on the property. And Intrinsic Companies is our for-profit venture. We own, I think, 9 buildings in Portland, the most recognizable of which is probably the Ford Building. We're currently under reconstruction on a building called the Dairy Building, which is on Southeast 8th and Southeast Division Place, which is on sawdust, on fill. The tower portion of that property is about 20,000 feet, and it's remarkably similar to these 2 buildings. The only thing that I wanted to make clear in terms of process was that we do continue to have interest in both buildings. I have experience over 20 years of remodeling and rebuilding old structures that were claimed to be absolutely at the end of their useful life. In fact, I've seen appraisals that said they're at the end of their useful life. And we have figured out ways to intelligently work with engineers to compromise and create safe environments for artists and startups. And I just wanted to clarify that in our offer, we asked for money for interior demolition, which we estimated to be about $250,000 for the 2 buildings, just taking out old mechanical pieces and things like that, not actual demolition. And for some lead abatement. We expected our total interior costs, which we asked for a credit from PDC, to be about somewhere around $500,000. So with the $1 million that's going to be spent to tear this building down, I feel like we'd be a long way towards creating operable buildings. I just wanted to put that out there so you guys knew that this was an option. I don't feel like it's been discussed. I did have one brief interview with staff of PDC. I've redeveloped about 1.5 million square feet of old buildings in my career of 20 years. I've financed those buildings, and our intention would be to create somewhere between 60 and 100 startup and art studio spaces in these 2 buildings in the event that we had an opportunity to save them. Our average cost on a rehab basis, turnkey, is around $100 a square foot. we thought we could do the project for about the same. It's a dramatically different number than all your consultants' estimates. It's not even in the same planet, but we also don't refinish it to look the same way that many of the beautiful, beautiful rehabs that have been done by the people like, for example, at Washington High School. Our estimate to do that work was about 20% of their estimate, but we weren't expecting to have the same finished product. So we feel like we can handle the settlement issue. I think after 90 years, it's about as far as it's probably going to go, but that's just my non-engineered opinion. I thank you for your time today, and I certainly am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Peggy, welcome.
Hi. My name is Peggy Moretti. I'm the Executive Director of Restore Oregon, and we're a nonprofit that works statewide to preserve and pass forward the historic places that make our communities livable and sustainable. I'm going to step away from my written out remarks to say a year ago we received a nomination from the Neighborhood Association asking us to list Centennial Mills on our list of Oregon's most endangered places. We declined to list it because we thought there was a plan in place that was going to move the property forward. And we now regret that decision very much. Normally I try to take a more positive tone, but you know, Centennial Mills is the site that gave birth to Portland and the commerce that launched our economy. And since taking ownership of this National Register eligible landmark in 2000, the PDC has failed in every conceivable way to fulfill its obligations to protect and steward this irreplaceable resource as is required by ORS Statute 358.653 and Section 106 of the Federal Preservation Act. Instead of executing the well-vetted Centennial Mills Framework Plan that laid out steps to make the site the pinnacle, quote unquote, the pinnacle of a rejuvenated and burgeoning river district, or capitalizing on one of, quote, Portland's greatest chances to create a community-defined riverfront open space while preserving a unique piece of the city's history, the PDC has offered up a lesson in demolition by neglect. Restore Oregon opposes the demolition of the feed mill, but if these years of neglect have made it truly necessary, we call upon the PDC to mitigate for its loss in a very major way. The money you approve today for an additional demolition must also include that additional funding of mitigation, and it must be very substantial. We need to see many more hundreds of thousands go toward restoration of the flour mill and a world-class interpretation of the story of this place using artifacts from the mill buildings, and or make additional funds available for the restoration of other at-risk city-owned historic places. The case of Centennial Mills sets forth an example of what not to do by a city that touts the values of preservation and reuse. With all due respect, the city should be ashamed, needs to make amends, and ensure that this never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Yeah, we can have Mike come back up, and Commissioner Edlin has a question for you.
So Mike, if I understand what you did correctly, your proposal is to acquire it and have PDC provide $500,000 towards improvements of the building, of this particular building.
We had not gotten to the point of getting actual bids because the timeline for submitting offers didn't really allow time nor access to get into the building and, as you know, get out the orange paint can and say, take this out, keep this, take this out, keep this. It's a rough estimate, but that's my ballpark. It's about $10 a foot on 60,000 feet.
Under your offer, did you presume that you would bring it up to the current site?
I don't see any way around that one in today's world in Portland. So yes, yeah, I worked with Tim Tarek, and we've come up with some scenarios under which we think we can do that through both shear wall work, you know, the sprayed concrete, forget what that's called, and steel beams.
What did you estimate the total cost to renovate for what you intended
we thought it would be between 2 and 3 million on the 20,000-foot building and around $100 a foot on the larger one, about 4 to 4.5.
And the use that you had, was it such that it would, for lack of a better term, be bankable to generate the funds, or did you have other sources for the funds to do that work?
The 20,000-foot building was going to be a nonprofit entity, so we intended to fundraise the bulk of that money through direct donations. And the reason that we picked that building was to keep it at a scale where we thought it would be achievable to raise the 2 to 2.5 million. I don't think banking a nonprofit is an easy thing to do, particularly since this is going to be the first venture of that nonprofit. And then the other building was going to be financed conventionally.
So if I understand correctly then, so it was a fundraising effort for the feed mill?
It was a fundraising effort for the feed mill and a conventionally financed effort for the other building. The idea was to put the two together to create enough of an ambiance to work with the new construction next door.
Would you, if there's an interest in bifurcating the two, if there's an interest in having your group do the feed mill by itself, would that be a bit?
Sure. Yeah, we think the buildings, because of the very shallow bay depths and the great window line, lay out very well for really small startup and art studio space. And that was the idea behind the renovation, to keep them very, for lack of a sophisticated description, gritty and affordable. The idea behind the nonprofit is that the mission is to keep rents for artists at roughly half the market rent. So as rents go up, the rents are significantly lower.
How much time would you need to get the lifeguard or perfect your numbers? The reason I asked is we're basically deadline.
Yeah. You know, we didn't get enough feedback. I mean, I can give you a back of the napkin 120 days is probably reality, because I think that's a typical due diligence period that's reasonable. We didn't get close enough to engaging with PDC in any level of control that we were able to then engage consultants to conduct due diligence on our approach. And so I think it's somewhere between 3 and 6 months is reality. Sure, thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of other individuals who'd like to testify in regards to Centennial Mills, David Dysert and Glenn Traeger.
Good afternoon. I am a member of the Pearl District Neighborhood Association's Planning and Transportation Committee. Patty couldn't be here, but I would like to read the letter that was submitted. The Pearl District Neighborhood Association is extremely unhappy with the proposed demolition of the feed mill. We've watched in dismay as Centennial Mills has been whittled down in scale, public hopes, and actual physical buildings. The demolition of the feed mill will be yet another loss for the city of Portland and the state of Oregon. The proposed demolition of the feed mill only points out how critical it is to save the flour mill. It must be renovated, including the water tower. We are concerned that another winter will pass without doing anything to stabilize this building. There's been unfortunately a history of water intrusion and neglect since the city bought the facility. We ask that the flour mill be winterized for the 2016 season and a clear plan created for the renovation of this structure. We also ask that some plan be created that incorporates the history of the site beyond token plaques. We also remind you of the framework plan that was created for the site in 2006. It had 5 redevelopment principles: provide open space, capture history, define a community focal point, strengthen connections, and embrace sustainability. We are concerned that these principles will not be upheld in the future of this site. We urge you to continue pushing these principles. And I just have a few personal comments to make. I live and work at Northwest 13th Avenue, Historic District in the Pearl District. Can you imagine the Pearl District without the 13th Avenue Historic Site? Can you imagine the brewery blocks without the brewery, or the Girding Theater, or the Echo Trust building? Portland's central planning and visioning has for decades declared the importance of celebrating the river and creating landmarks dedicated to showcasing the history of this river. It is, after all, why we are here in the first place. Are we to reduce the significance of the site to a plaque and a mere real estate transaction? Here once stood Portland's historic waterfront. Sorry we didn't care enough to save the last remaining piece of it. We understand why in the 50s and 60s we were deluded with the visions of the future and the great promise of the automobile that we decimated both sides of our waterfront with freeway building in an attempt to save downtown. We now know better. And so it is all the more inexcusable to be tearing down this one remaining historic site along our waterfront. We should know better. This is a complete failure of stewardship of a significant public asset through willful neglect. Please do not tear down any more of our history. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Glenn Traeger. I'm on the board of directors at Pearl Neighborhood Association, but the testimony is my own. I'm just here for myself. Today's meeting, there's a lot of negative energy. We're talking about demolition of some very important buildings, and it seems like there really isn't much positive information coming out of the testimony that I've heard today. So what I'd like to do is present you a more positive approach. What my vision of this site is, instead of just tearing it down. My vision of this site, when all said and done, is you have a regional park or a city park on the waterfront where people would be able to do water sports and take a canoe, maybe possible a water taxi. I know that was in some of the plans for the city of Portland. You'd have a beautiful building like the flour mill, the feed mill, where you'd have on the ground floor, you'd have an area where people could rent kayaks and rent canoes and that stuff and paddle along the river. On the second floor, maybe a restaurant with glass windows where people can get a fish sandwich or some clam chowder. And just look at the beautiful, majestic Willamette River that we have. I don't know whether or not you realize it, but there's this, Portland Superfund cleanup that the EPA is doing right now, or at least they're studying it. It should be done within 7 years. There's $750 million is being spent on this cleanup, and that's just a start. So we're talking maybe even close to $1 billion that Portland is going to be spending to clean up the Willamette River. We need an area to use that river, to use that cleanup. If you think about it, on the west side of the Willamette River, where is a place where somebody can actually go in and jump into the river to use it? St. John's, maybe south of South Waterfront, but from that stretch, there really isn't anywhere where people can enjoy the river. Now, certainly the river is probably not in the best shape now, but we're going to be spending close to $1 billion cleaning up the river. So we need something, at least an entrance into the river where we can enjoy this cleaner water that we all have. So please, when you look at this site, yeah, sure, there's a lot of negative things here, but there's a positive vision that we can strive for. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in the next month, but certainly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, do we want Will back up here? Bruce is coming back up for a last hurrah here.
I still work here, right? At least for a couple more weeks. I really appreciate, is this on? I can't hear very well,
Yeah,
so if I'm talking too loud, let me know. I really appreciated the comments that we had from the people before. And again, as we can all tell, this is a very important process and the structure that we've all been dealt with. And I thought I wanted to give a little perspective of what my work has been with my team over the last few years. We've struggled with these same questions because we've dealt with it. I came here a little over 4 years ago. This was the first thing I worked on. Coming from the private sector, I approached it as a developer. I've looked at it as a developer. I think that the challenge I had in that was it was so complicated and there were so many good intentions on it, but it was never taken to the point where people could actually understand, and the research and the money spent in order to determine what could be done, given the condition it was that day. It was challenging looking at, what could have been, what it should have been. That's where we didn't go. We had to deal with what we were today. And again, what the budget that we had with. And so at the time, 4 years ago, we had a budget of $16 million. We were able to come up with more. We raised it to a little over $20 million at the time, because we just knew it was going to be more. We went through a very long process with another developer who looked at it and came back and said, I need $38 million in order to restore this. And that was a very challenging conversation for all of us. And yet, even at that time, the real questions hadn't been answered yet, the real research. And so as, Mr. Tevis said, hey, I've got a rough estimate on this. We took our numbers further than that. We actually spent approximately $100,000. We took things not just from concept, we took it to drawings. And we spent literally probably hundreds of hours thinking about these issues and doing our own analysis with experts and consultants, other developers, running numbers. And at the end of the day, the challenge we have is that what you're left with is worth less than what it's going to cost to get there. And so then it was a question about resources. And our resources right now show us a little over $5 million on this project. And from that $5 million, we need to build the Greenway. And we've got a lot of commitments for other things on that project that we think we can achieve. But it didn't leave a lot left over, for other projects. So we thought we should focus on the flour mill. And that's what our team has done. We basically said, we hear, and we believe in it too, because we love that building and the water tank and everything. But in the world of where we are, and when we did the numbers, it just made sense unless we had significant more public resources, what it was going to take. And, the financial models, you just can't get there. If you're going to charge, $18 rents, which I think would be great if we can keep the rents low, there's just not enough value created. And so there's no parking, there's other things that are challenging. So the numbers just kept getting worse. And so we felt it was best to really then recognize where it is today and focus on the preservation of the flour mill, because we think that's achievable. But the feed mill, trying to do both, it would just take so much dollars that we just didn't have in resources. So with that, I just felt like I wanted to if I could answer any questions about the buildings or anything else that you might have. I've kind of lived with it more than anybody else the last 4 years, so I'd be happy to do that too.
Commissioner Edlin.
Will, you talked about potential outside funding for the flour mill. Do you have any specific thoughts around that?
I think we can potentially approach some of our bureau partners and see what sort of interest they may have for involving themselves in certain aspects of the project. There's, as significant value in the land, both to the north of the flour mill that we've now created as a developable area, as well as to the south of the building where the MPU is currently located. I think that any preservation efforts would obviously include trying to obtain historic tax credits as part of the capital stack, and potentially other grants and donations from other types of impact investors and foundations.
You mentioned repairs to the flour building to preserve it. Are any of those that would be monies that would be ill-spent with the notion that when a developer hopefully comes along that wants to redevelop that property, that he or she might have to duplicate those expenditures?
We are repairing about 1,500 square feet of the roof that currently, is caving in and lets all the water in. That repair is not a full replacement of the roof. We're not replacing the entire roof, and we're not replacing it to a finish level that a future development would require. And so there may be some duplicated effort there, but I feel like if we don't do it, the deterioration of the building is going to continue, and the process from getting from today to when people start swinging hammers out there to do the real restoration, could be, another year, 2 years. So I think it's important that we spend the money that's required to get it buttoned up,
We're doing that work now, is that right?
We are.
What does it cost us a year to keep the MPU? And the reason I ask is I personally view it as a waste of waterfront property. And I'm dismayed at the offers that we received, and I view the MPU as a potential impediment to the marketability of the property.
I don't have the exact figures on what the costs are. The MPU, maybe.
It's about $100,000.
Okay.
I mean, he wouldn't know because he wasn't around when we were actually operating it. They left. So fortunately, Dave was in the audience. About $100,000 a year. Part of the challenge with the MPU, though, is if there's no one there, then we have a lot of issues with this stuff happening.
We're going to have to, we got a couple more items, so we're going to have to move along.
I just want to ask one quick
Sure.
point of clarification. So my understanding was that there was no privately proposed development project that had been able to address the framework plan principles that was within the budget of PDC. Is that still inaccurate? Because I guess I'm
Well,
confused
I
with
think
some of the testimony I've heard
the
today.
answer is
and that's-
within the budget that we had. The answer is yes.
No, none.
Well, we only had one. We had one offer from Harsh Investment back in 2012. And we decided to move forward with Harsh to give them an opportunity to take a look at what could be done on the site, in alignment with the framework plan. They came back and they asked, we could do X, which I don't have a picture of it here, but the cost of that X from a public investment, they wanted the land for free plus another $38 million, which was, we only had a budget of 20.
So, I guess that I hear clearly that it's a staff recommendation that the last building we're going to be able to keep. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. And we're confident.
We're committed to that.
That's right.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, we are.
All right. So, golly, it's, at least from my perspective, being a remodeling contractor, I never want to tear a building down. But it seems so compelling that we don't have the money to repair the building. We have a safety issue of some significance, and, in our write-ups, it's very clear there, and we have a responsibility not to have that building go into the river. So even though I regret it, having to make that, I would accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm not in favor.
So it's, I need to call for the noes. So all those against?
Well, it's a no.
Okay. So we have a no and 3 yeses. So I guess the motion carries. Thank you. Very difficult.
Great job by the staff,
Yeah.
and thank you for all the hard work.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay. We have item number 8, authorizing actions associated with 9101 Foster for development, construction, and management of the 9101 Southeast Foster Road project within the Lance Town Center. Gina and Will.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Kelly, Commissioners, and Executive Director Branham. My name is Gina Bieland, and I'm the Director of Real Estate and Lending here at PDC. And with me is Will Thayer, the Project Manager, and Laura Alcinas, our Financing Specialist. And my last hurrah. Just want to share with you, I'm not sure if you all know, but I'm a 4th-generation Oregonian. My great-grandmother came to Oregon via a wagon train, and she settled in Lents. My grandfather was born and raised in Lents and lived there until the early 90s when he passed away. He worked for the transportation for the city of Portland, And there's pictures of me on my trike as a small child visiting them. So when we had the opportunity 2 years ago to do an RFI in Lents, it was a heartfelt opportunity. We went with a slightly different concept than we had in the past. We worked a lot with all the communities, with the developers, and we're very excited and thrilled to be where we're at today. I'm privileged to have been a part of this dynamic work to revitalize Lents Town Center. It's very close to my heart, and so I'm excited to bring these resolutions for consideration today to move forward the 9101 project. So today, the status of the Lents Town Center is they are either in design review and process or complete for 4 projects, which we consider phase 1. The 9101 Foster project status, the design is complete, permits approved, and the construction bid finally complete. The next milestones, which are very exciting, the construction contract to be signed 9/22, the multi, which is a PHB tax exemption approval, will be considered on the 5th of October. PHB and PDC will have simultaneous loan closings in order to fund the construction of this project on the 13th of October. And with excitement and on schedule, we're under budget of the original approval in February of 2016, and ground would be breaking around the 23rd of October. So, Will?
Thanks, Gina. So the development profile for this project has not changed since its original inception under Williams and Dame. The building will be 3/1 construction, 54 residential units with over 7,000 square feet of ground floor retail. Of the 54 apartment units, 30% will be affordable to households at 60% MFI and below. The project will also provide a number of amenities such as tuck under parking, private storage space for the tenants, as well as a bicycle and package pickup room. This project was originally recommended by a local stakeholder evaluation committee in 2015 out of a total of 9 proposals that we received out of the RFI that Gina just mentioned. Staff has provided regular monthly updates to the Lents Neighborhood Association and other local stakeholder groups throughout the pre-development work. In early 2016, Williams and Dame elected to discontinue the development process. But in order to ensure that our commitments to the community were met, PDC elected to take over the project and continue the development process with the existing architect and general contractor. Excuse me. Staff relayed this change in ownership to the LNA in late July. Today's action of approving both the GMP construction contract as well as the PDC construction loan will put the project on track for an October breaking ground. Construction is expected to take 1 year, and during that time, staff will be overseeing the project with the assistance of Hacker Architecture. Also during that time, we will engage both a property manager and a retail leasing broker for the commercial spaces. Pre-leasing will begin in the summer of 2017, with move-in starting in November. The total development costs are shown on the table here. Total costs of roughly $250 per square foot are generally in line with the industry average for this type of construction. We are achieving the equity policy requirements of both 20% hard and soft costs and are projected to achieve a LEED Gold rating according to our green building policy. Of note, we have added 2% deferred developer fee at the suggestion of our Commissioner Mark Edlin. This fee represents the risks that PDC is taking on and is an acknowledgement of our financial sustainability goals going forward. I'll now turn it over to Laura Alcinas to talk about the capital structure of the project.
Good afternoon, Laura Alcinas, loan officer here at PDC. I'm with you to talk about the project financing. If approved, the primary financing for this would be a loan from PDC of just under $15.1 million. The interest rate, as provided by the city treasurer, would be fixed at the local government investment pool rate. It was hovering just below 1% in July and represents what PDC would otherwise be earning on its cash. The loan would be structured as a 10-year term, 40-year amortization, and PDC would have a first lien priority on the property. and it would be a cash flow dependent note, meaning after all must pay debt, PDC's debt would be repaid. PHB has approved lending funds to support the affordable components of the project. Their total investment would be $1.152 million, and in accordance with their guidelines, the interest rate would be 0% during the construction period and 1.5% thereafter for a fully amortizing 30-year loan. That equates to payments of roughly $48,000 annually, and they would be holding a second position trust deed on the property. As Will just discussed, we are incorporating a developer fee into the project budget. We're not recommending that the PDC or the PHB loan funds be increased, rather that the developer fee would come in as a deferred developer fee and would be paid from cash flows of the project. Our pro forma shows that it could be paid fully from the first year NOI, from the first year affordable cash of the project, and it would be superior to PDC's loan payments. And so it would, the developer fee, the deferred developer fee would be paid first, and then PDC loan repayment. We'll also note that PDC intends to refinance a portion of its loan as soon as practical. We project that after 3 years of stabilization, we would be able to obtain a federally guaranteed HUD 223F loan product and refinance up to approximately $6.8 million. The sizing at that point would depend on the success of the building, the cash flow, and its ability to service the debt at the time of underwriting. But the federally guaranteed product would allow PDC to maximize the refinance and return those funds to the Lents URA for other community priority projects. We anticipate that at that time, PDC and PHB would have to subordinate our positions on that debt, and remaining PDC principal would continue to be repaid from cash flows as available from the project.
So in summary, this is, I think, the first time that the board has been acting in its new dual-hatted position as both the board of PDC as well as the sole member of the 9101 Foster LLC. What that means is that as a PDC board, we're requesting that you authorize the $15.1 million loan to the LLC for construction of the project, as well as delegating spending authority to the manager of the LLC, who is Kimberly Branham. That's in order to accomplish certain tasks within development that exceed her normal $500,000 expense cap, like transfer of the property for $829,000, payment of SDCs in excess of $500,000, as well as a few other things. Then on behalf of the LLC itself, we are asking that you approve and authorize borrowing of those funds, as well as PHB's funds, executing the GMP contract with Bremick Construction, and then purchasing the property and the work product from PDC.
Questions, commissioners? No questions? Do we have a couple of other individuals who are here to testify?
Great work by staff, though, and also our private partner, Williams Dane, to help us get to this point.
So if we could have Judy Lowe and Annette Matson up here. Judy represents the Lents Neighborhood Association. She's the chair. And Annette is the PGE.
I am Judy.
Let's start with Judy.
Oh, okay. We were going to do it the other way around, but that's fine.
Well, I don't have a big agenda here. If you,
I do, because you have the history. We would like to do this in chronological order.
okay.
Chair Kelly and members of the commission, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today in favor of the 9101 project. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Annette Matson. Since I don't know most of you, I'd like to take a minute to share a little of my background and perspective. I work for PGE in local government affairs, and I'm a longtime East Portland advocate. I served on the David Douglas School Board for 18 years. Over half of the Lents URA is within the David Douglas School District. I'm involved with the East Portland Action Plan. I've been a member of the PDC Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Committee for 3 years. I served on the Lents Urban Renewal Advisory Committee for 3 years before that. And I was a chair of the Lentz 5-year action plan, which was approved by this commission in 2014 and adopted by the City Council. The action plan is a focus plan based on the many years of studies, research, community input since this multi-neighborhood URA was formed. All of that prior work, those were the appendices to this document. I also served on the Action Plan RFI Committee, which selected the projects for PDC to move forward. This project, 9101, was one of the projects the entire committee was really excited about. The commercial space on the ground floor will help bring much-needed businesses, jobs, and services to the town center. This helps fulfill the community's vision of a thriving business district. The project's housing mix is another important step in our long-term goal of having a balance of housing choices, something that all of Portland's neighborhoods should have. It moves us toward the promise of a 50-50 mix, market rate and affordable housing. Affordable housing to prevent displacement, and market rate to attract and retain the businesses and services the community wants and needs. Also, this project's approach of having a PDC-owned and developed project is a new way of supporting urban renewal by PDC. The refinancing of this project that's mentioned on page 3 of your report so that other community priorities can be delivered on is important. I support PDC development, ownership, and refinancing as proposed. What I want to talk about is what breaking ground on 9101 will represent. 2016 has possibly been the most stressful year in East and Southeast Portland's history since the building of I-205. This major investment would be a morale boost, a sign that the city's neighborhoods most affected by the crisis of houselessness have not been abandoned by the leadership in the city of Portland. The city would be investing real and highly visible development dollars into fulfilling the vision held for the area since the mid-1990s. I'd like to read something for you that was approved by the Lentz Neighborhood Association in 1995 and adopted by the city in 1996. This is the Lentz Neighborhood Plan, and this is the final paragraph of the vision for the Lentz neighborhood. In the year 2015, Lentz will be a thriving urban center in the outer southeast section of Portland, where people enjoy living, working, and going for activities and recreation. Lentz will be respected as a great place to be at an area where expectations are high for an improved quality of life for the 20 years beyond 2015. Well, it's late 2016, and we're getting started. We're making forward motion. We were making forward motion, and then the Great Recession hit. This investment by PDC represents movement toward the vision that the community and the city had hoped to have accomplished by last year. 9101, the Asian Health Service Center, the new Copper Penny site, 92H. There is a lot of work left to do in this urban renewal area, and I respectfully ask that you take this important step today by adopting Resolution 7209. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your community service.
Well, I wanted to cry when she read that paragraph in the Lentz action plan, so let me collect myself. My name is Judy Lowe. I'm the Lentz Neighborhood Association Chair. I represent the current and future members of the Lentz Neighborhood Association. There are over 22,000 residents and over 16 native languages in Lentz, and that was at last count. One of my stated objectives upon accepting the position of chair is to engage and include more residents and to expand the LNA membership to include the refugees, immigrants, and communities of color who add such richness to the fabric of our city. The 9101 Foster is near the Western Lentz Monument at the front door of Lentz. So welcome to East Portland. Nearby is the first retail U-Haul site in the nation. U-Haul was a mom-and-pop business started by Sam and Anna Mary Schoen after Sam was discharged from the Navy after World War II. Founded in the 1940s, U-Haul is now a billion-dollar company employing thousands of people, including several from Lentz. Lentzens are proud of Lentz's place in history. The Boys and Girls Club occupies the spot where Oliver Lentz built the first Lentz school. We have a Founders Day parade. Woody Guthrie lived down the street on 92nd Avenue, used to be called Main Street. The former Lentz Library is now a pest control business right next to the 9101. For the past several years, Lentz has been battered by jaw-dropping rent hikes and the soaring prices of homes. Combine that with the dearth of living wage jobs, layer it with the destruction of the Springwater Corridor, compounded by the crime that accompanied it, and you can imagine why morale is at an all-time low in Lentz. Lentz needs affordable housing, mom and pop, small business and startup incubators, living wage employment opportunities, and a community gathering spot, Portland's living room on the east side. The development of the Lentz Town Center is a lifeline, a ray of hope that says Lentz is not abandoned. 9101 is a much-needed and welcome investment that will inject some vitality into Lentz and to help change the perception of Lentz as a down-and-out community. The Town Center should reflect the character of Lentz, honor the legacy of civic-minded pioneer Oliver P. Lent, and at the same time update it. Look to the future for the grandchildren of the millennials. Let's tweet Keep Portland Weird and call it Keep Portland Wired. Let's keep the charm of the craftsman and the elegance of the era, and let's do it with a little elan. Let's keep let's return to the days when the shopkeepers lived above their stores and knew everyone in the neighborhood. Let's have open markets and open doors, open spaces and gathering places. Let's make the Copper Penny the East Portland icon, the counterpart of the West Portland White Stag. Why not? There's gold in them dar hills. We've got Mount Scott, Mount Tabor, Mount Lentz. Our gold is in our people. Honor our past and give hope to our future. Retain the historical buildings and landmarks, or at least their facades, to preserve the charm of the buildings that were designed by the 19th and 20th century architects and visionaries. Celebrate our resilience and forgiveness with the regrowth and healing of the Springwater. The pride that Lentz Park is not only the 4th largest park in Portland, it's the only park that comes with pickles. Zoya House and El Pato Feliz are the seeds of our international cuisine corner, and there's room for emerging business incubator for international entrepreneurs. Remember the U-Haul, mom and pop idea that turned into a billion-dollar company? Right around the corner. Lentizens work hard and play hard. We have endured a criminal beating at the hands of recent events. We are resilient, we are strong, and we are excited that the 9101 may be the catalyst for change for us. It promises affordable housing, opportunity, and an East Portland living room. We look forward to working with the Portland Development Commission to be at the forefront of innovation and ingenuity, the leaders in Lentz development. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly not sure that I recall the same level of eloquence from two people testifying in all the time I've been on the commission. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Questions? I believe we are probably ready for a vote, or do you want to have staff back up? Any more questions for staff?
Make a motion, we adopt resolution 7209. 7209.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No no's, right? Just checking. The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. It's okay. We are very excited that you're very excited. Okay. It's like we've lost control. Let's take a 2-minute break, 3-minute break. Okay, I'm adjourning the executive session, going back into the regular session, and we are adjourning that session. Thank you all very much. There is seismic work that's going to be done in the building. She started 3 months
Hopefully